They had no idea that the black woman they were about to humiliate, degrade, and forcibly drag out of their luxury hotel was the billionaire CEO who owned every marble tile they stood on and could destroy their careers with a single phone call. When Samantha Williams walked into her own Chicago flagship hotel exhausted from travel, racist concierge Marcus Thompson looked at her with pure disgust and snarled, "The executive lounge isn't for people like you." The hatred escalated when he accused her of being a fraud trying to scam their services, demanding she prove her worthiness by exposing her private financial information on a public tablet like a suspected criminal. But when Marcus threatened to have security permanently ban her and drag her out in front of everyone, he crossed a line that would end his career forever. That's when Samantha's voice turned ice cold as she made the call that would shatter his world. Initiate Protocol Red. Full management override. Now. Every screen in the hotel flashed red as the entire building went into emergency lockdown, and Marcus's face turned white with terror when he realized he had just threatened to assault the founder and owner of the entire hotel chain. What this racist did next when he discovered the woman he tried to destroy could fire every single person in the building will leave you speechless. You won't believe how 9 minutes of pure hatred turned into the most devastating corporate justice ever caught on camera. In exactly 9 minutes, the woman walking through that opulent hotel lobby would fire an entire crew and expose a discrimination scandal that would revolutionize the hospitality industry forever. Samantha Williams pulled her carry-on bag across the polished marble floor of the Grand View Hotel in downtown Chicago, her jeans and comfortable sweater marking her as distinctly different from the usual clientele who graced this five-star establishment. But what the impeccably dressed staff, bustling around the crystal chandeliers, didn't know was that they were witnessing the arrival of the most powerful person in the building. The irony of the situation was breathtaking in its completeness. Samantha was the founder and CEO of Prestige Hospitality Group, the woman who had transformed this single property from a struggling boutique hotel into the flagship of a luxury empire worth over $2 billion. Every piece of Italian marble beneath her feet, every handcrafted light fixture above her head, every policy that governed how guests should be treated had been personally approved by the woman now being eyed with subtle suspicion by her own employees. Today's visit represented more than just a routine inspection disguised as personal business. Samantha was conducting the most important quality assessment of her career, a covert evaluation that would determine whether her hotel was ready to become the exclusive hospitality partner for Reynolds Corporation, a partnership worth over $50 million annually that could elevate the Grandview brand to international prominence. But beneath the business stakes lay something far more personal and meaningful to Samantha's mission as a leader. She had built Prestige Hospitality Group on the fundamental principle that luxury should never be synonymous with exclusion, that true hospitality meant creating environments where every guest felt valued regardless of their appearance, background, or perceived economic status. Her own journey from a housekeeping supervisor to a billionaire CEO had taught her that greatness often came in unexpected packages. The 20-hour flight from her meetings in Dubai had left Samantha looking more like a weary traveler than a corporate executive, and that was exactly what she needed for this assessment. She wanted to experience her hotel through the eyes of someone who didn't announce their importance, through designer clothes and expensive accessories, someone whose worth might be judged by surface appearances rather than their actual value. Jessica Chen, the veteran front desk manager, noticed Samantha's arrival with the trained eye of someone who had spent 15 years in luxury hospitality. Something about the woman's composed confidence despite her casual appearance caught Jessica's attention, triggering the professional instincts that had made her one of the most respected managers in the Prestige network. What Jessica couldn't have known was that she was about to witness a master class in how true leadership responds when discrimination meets unlimited corporate authority. The woman she was observing would soon demonstrate that the most powerful response to prejudice isn't anger or legal threats, But having the ability to reconstruct entire systems to ensure such treatment becomes impossible rather than just punishable. The stage was set for a confrontation that would redefine not just one hotel's approach to customer service, but potentially transform how the entire hospitality industry thinks about dignity, respect, and the dangerous assumptions that can destroy careers in a matter of minutes. If you believe that how we treat people when we think no one important is watching reveals our true character, hit that like button right now. Share in the comments a time when you were judged unfairly based on your appearance. And don't forget to subscribe, because what Samantha is about to do to expose this discrimination will prove that sometimes the most effective justice comes from people who have the power to change entire systems, not just individual lives. But the moment Samantha approached the gleaming concierge desk with its gold-plated nameplate, everything she had built her hospitality empire to prevent came crashing down in the most devastating display of professional discrimination she had ever witnessed. Marcus Thompson stood behind the mahogany counter like a sentinel guarding the gates of exclusivity, his perfectly pressed uniform and condescending smile creating an immediate barrier between those he deemed worthy and those he considered beneath the hotel's standards. Marcus had been working at the Grandview for 3 years, and in that time he had cultivated a reputation as the ultimate gatekeeper, someone who took pride in his ability to distinguish between guests who truly belonged in their luxury environment and those who were simply trying to access privileges they hadn't earned. His philosophy was simple. Appearances mattered, and maintaining the hotel's exclusive atmosphere required constant vigilance against people who might diminish the experience for their truly elite clientele. When Samantha reached the desk and made her request with quiet confidence, Marcus's response was swift and brutal in its casual cruelty. His eyes performed a deliberate assessment of her travel-worn appearance, scanning from her comfortable sneakers to her wrinkled sweater, with a kind of dismissive calculation that suggested years of practice in judging people's worth based on their clothing rather than their character. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, his voice carrying the false politeness that barely concealed his genuine disdain. "But the executive lounge is reserved for our platinum members and VIP guests only. Perhaps the main lobby would be more appropriate for someone like you." The phrase, "someone like you," hung in the air like a poison dart, its meaning unmistakable to anyone who had ever experienced discrimination based on appearance, race, or perceived economic status. Marcus had just reduced Samantha to a stereotype, dismissing her request not based on any legitimate policy or procedure, but solely on his assumption that her casual appearance meant she couldn't possibly belong in the hotel's most exclusive spaces. What made the moment even more appalling was the theatrical nature of Marcus's rejection. He delivered his dismissal with a kind of performative authority that suggested he genuinely enjoyed wielding his power over people he considered inferior. This wasn't just poor customer service, it was systematic exclusion designed to humiliate someone into accepting their perceived place in his carefully constructed hierarchy. Samantha stood perfectly still, her composure unshakable despite the fire building in her chest. She had faced discrimination countless times throughout her rise from hourly employee to billionaire executive, but experiencing it in her own hotel, delivered by her own employee using policies she had created to ensure equal treatment, was something entirely different. The irony was staggering. A concierge was using company standards to exclude the very person who had written those standards to prevent such exclusion. From across the lobby, Jessica Chen watched the interaction with growing concern. Her 15 years of experience in luxury hospitality had taught her to recognize the subtle signs of discrimination, and what she was witnessing violated every principle of professional customer service. More troubling was her instinctive sense that Marcus was making a terrible mistake, that the woman he was dismissing possessed an authority that went far beyond what her appearance suggested. Marcus, however, was too intoxicated by his own sense of power to notice Jessica's concern or to recognize the dangerous calm in Samantha's demeanor. He had just provided the perfect example of institutional discrimination in action, creating all the evidence needed to justify the systematic response that was about to reshape his understanding of who really controlled his professional future. The countdown to career destruction had officially begun, and Marcus Thompson had just lit the fuse himself. What happened next proved that some people's prejudice runs so deep that calm professionalism only emboldens them to reveal their true character in increasingly humiliating ways. Instead of recognizing Samantha's quiet dignity as a sign that he might be making a catastrophic error in judgment, Marcus Thompson interpreted her composed response as weakness, an invitation to escalate his discriminatory treatment into something that would provide all the evidence needed to justify his complete professional destruction. When Samantha calmly stated that she did indeed have platinum status and requested access to the executive lounge, Marcus's reaction was swift and devastating in its calculated cruelty. His laugh was sharp and dismissive, the sound of someone who believed he had just caught a fraud attempting to access privileges she clearly didn't deserve based on his superficial assessment of her worthiness. "I'll need to see your membership card, identification and room confirmation," Marcus announced, with the false authority of a customs agent processing a suspected criminal. "We've had issues recently with people trying to forge access credentials or use expired memberships to gain entry to restricted areas." The accusation was so outrageous, so deliberately insulting, that it transformed the elegant lobby atmosphere into something toxic and exclusionary. Marcus had just accused Samantha of potential fraud, essentially calling her a criminal based solely on his assumption that someone dressed casually couldn't possibly possess legitimate platinum status at a luxury hotel. But Marcus wasn't finished demonstrating exactly why his employment was about to end in the most spectacular fashion possible. Emboldened by what he interpreted as her compliance, he decided to escalate his humiliation tactics into territory that violated every principle of customer privacy and professional courtesy that Samantha had spent years implementing throughout her hotel network. Furthermore, Marcus continued, his voice gaining confidence as he warmed to his theme of systematic degradation. "I'll need additional verification of your room booking confirmation and payment method before I can even consider granting access to our executive facilities. We have strict protocols to prevent unauthorized individuals from attempting to scam our premium services." The demand was so brazenly inappropriate that it took Samantha's breath away. Marcus was essentially requiring her to prove her financial worthiness through multiple forms of documentation, treating her like a suspected con artist rather than a guest requesting standard hotel services. No legitimate hospitality professional would ever subject a guest to such degrading verification procedures, especially not in a public lobby where other patrons could witness the humiliation. What made the situation even more appalling was Marcus's obvious enjoyment of his power to humiliate. He delivered each demand with increasing satisfaction, savoring his ability to force someone he considered beneath him to jump through hoops designed to emphasize her perceived inferiority. This wasn't just discrimination. It was sadistic pleasure derived from wielding authority over someone he believed couldn't fight back. Jessica Chen, observing from her position at the front desk, felt her professional blood run cold as she recognized the magnitude of Marcus's violation of basic hospitality principles. Her years of experience had taught her that treating guests with suspicion and demanding excessive documentation was not just poor customer service. It was a firing offense that could result in legal consequences for the hotel. Samantha stood perfectly still, her tablet clutched in her hands, as she realized she was witnessing the systematic destruction of everything she had built her company to represent. The policies Marcus was claiming to enforce didn't exist in her employee handbook because she had specifically designed their procedures to eliminate exactly this kind of discriminatory treatment. The irony was complete. An employee was inventing fake protocols to justify treating the owner of the hotel like a suspected criminal, providing perfect documentation of institutional discrimination that would soon become the foundation for his termination and the complete restructuring of the hotel's management team. The trap was set, and Marcus Thompson was eagerly placing his own head in the noose. But just as Marcus's discriminatory treatment reached its most degrading peak, the luxury hotel lobby transformed into a stage where character would be revealed and moral lines would be drawn in ways that would determine not just careers, but the future direction of an entire hospitality empire. The elegant space that had been designed to showcase refined service was about to become a battleground where principles would clash with prejudice and where some people would choose to stand for what was right, while others revealed themselves as willing accomplices to systematic discrimination. The first voice to break the tension came from an unexpected source that would prove how easily prejudice finds validation from those who should know better. Robert Sterling, a distinguished man in his 70s who had been a regular guest at the Grandview for over a decade, looked up from his leather chair in the seating area where he had been reading the financial news. His expensive suit, gold watch, and obvious comfort in the luxury environment marked him as exactly the kind of clientele that Marcus believed deserved protection from people who didn't meet his arbitrary standards of worthiness. "He's absolutely right to be thorough," Robert declared, his voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to being heard and respected in elite circles. "These days, you simply cannot be too careful about people trying to take advantage of premium services they haven't earned. The hotel has every responsibility to protect the integrity of their exclusive amenities." His words landed like validation for Marcus's discriminatory behavior, providing exactly the kind of support that emboldened prejudice and transformed individual bias into institutional culture. Robert wasn't just passively observing discrimination. He was actively endorsing it, using his status as a valued guest to legitimize treatment that violated every principle of professional hospitality. But as Robert's validation encouraged Marcus to continue his systematic humiliation of Samantha, another voice emerged that would prove not everyone in positions of influence chooses to use their power to diminish others. Jessica Chen had been watching the interaction with growing alarm, her 15 years of professional experience telling her that what she was witnessing wasn't just poor customer service, but a catastrophic violation of basic hospitality principles that could destroy the hotel's reputation and expose them to serious legal consequences. Jessica's approach was careful and diplomatic, but her concern was unmistakable to anyone trained to recognize the subtle dynamics of professional intervention. She moved toward the concierge desk with the measured steps of someone who understood she was about to challenge a colleague in front of guests. A violation of hospitality protocol that she was willing to risk because the situation had spiraled so far beyond acceptable boundaries. "Marcus," Jessica said quietly, her voice designed to be heard without creating a scene, "perhaps we should handle this verification process privately in the back office, in accordance with our standard privacy protocols for valued guests." Her suggestion was a masterpiece of professional diplomacy, offering Marcus a face-saving way to de-escalate the situation while simultaneously protecting Samantha from further public humiliation. Jessica wasn't directly challenging Marcus's authority, but she was clearly signaling that his treatment of the guest was inappropriate and needed to be corrected immediately. But Marcus, intoxicated by Robert's validation and convinced of his own righteousness, interpreted Jessica's intervention as interference from someone who didn't understand the importance of maintaining proper standards. His response revealed the depth of his arrogance and his dangerous misunderstanding of where real authority lay in the hotel hierarchy. "Jessica, I appreciate your concern, but I'm perfectly capable of handling this situation according to proper protocols," Marcus replied with barely concealed irritation. "This guest is attempting to access premium services without providing adequate verification, and I will not compromise our standards simply to avoid hurt feelings." The dismissal was brutal in its condescension, treating Jessica's professional expertise and diplomatic intervention as naive interference. Marcus had just rejected guidance from one of the most experienced managers in the hotel, someone whose instincts about guest relations had been proven correct countless times over her decade and a half of service. What Marcus couldn't have known was that Jessica's intervention wasn't just about protecting a guest from inappropriate treatment. It was about protecting him from making a career-ending mistake with someone whose authority extended far beyond what her casual appearance suggested. Jessica's years of experience had taught her to recognize when someone possessed an inner confidence that came from real power, and every instinct she had developed was screaming that Marcus was about to destroy himself. Meanwhile, other hotel staff members throughout the lobby found themselves choosing sides in a conflict that would define their own professional futures. Some, influenced by Marcus's apparent confidence and Robert's validation, remained silent or offered subtle support for what they assumed was proper enforcement of hotel standards. Others, recognizing the irregularity of the situation, began to distance themselves from Marcus's approach, sensing that something was fundamentally wrong with treating any guest with such obvious suspicion and hostility. The battle lines were drawn. The characters had revealed their true nature, and the countdown to institutional justice was accelerating toward a conclusion that would shock everyone who had chosen to support discrimination over dignity. If you're as frustrated as I am watching people with privilege use their status to support discrimination while principled professionals like Jessica risk their own positions to do what's right, smash that like button to show your support for people who choose integrity over convenience. Comment below with a heart emoji if you've ever had to choose between staying silent and speaking up against injustice. And hit subscribe, because what's about to happen when Marcus discovers who he's really been discriminating against will prove that character always wins over prejudice when justice has the power to back it up. What happened next would push this already explosive situation past the point of no return, transforming workplace discrimination into something so legally dangerous and professionally catastrophic that it would justify the nuclear corporate response that was about to be deployed against Marcus and everyone who had enabled his behavior. Emboldened by Robert Sterling's validation and interpreting Jessica's diplomatic intervention as weakness rather than wisdom, Marcus Thompson made the fatal decision to escalate his treatment of Samantha into territory that would provide all the evidence needed to reconstruct the entire hotel management structure. Marcus's confidence had transformed into something reckless and dangerous, fueled by the intoxicating combination of wealthy guest approval and his own inflated sense of authority. He had convinced himself that he was protecting the hotel's reputation and maintaining proper standards, when in reality he was about to trigger the most spectacular example of hospitality industry accountability ever witnessed in a luxury establishment. The dismissal of Jessica's professional guidance had been bad enough, but what Marcus did next would cross every line that separated poor customer service from potential criminal behavior. His frustration with Samantha's quiet persistence, combined with his rage at being diplomatically challenged by a colleague, drove him to make a decision that would haunt his professional life forever. "Ma'am," Marcus announced, his voice rising to a level that was drawing attention from other guests throughout the marble lobby, "if you continue to cause a disturbance and refuse to comply with our verification procedures, I will have no choice but to call security to escort you from the premises." The threat hung in the air like a death sentence, transforming the elegant hotel lobby into a battleground where the fundamental principles of hospitality were being systematically destroyed by the very person who was supposed to uphold them. Marcus had just threatened to have a guest physically removed from the hotel, not because she had violated any actual policies or engaged in disruptive behavior, but because she had calmly requested access to services while failing to meet his arbitrary standards of appearance-based worthiness. But Marcus wasn't finished demonstrating exactly why his employment was about to end in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. The taste of his own authority seemed to embolden him, and he continued his assault, with the kind of cruel precision that suggested this wasn't his first time using threats of removal to intimidate guests he considered undesirable. "This is a respectable establishment with standards to maintain," Marcus continued, his voice now carrying the full weight of his misguided sense of righteousness. "We don't tolerate disruptive behavior from people who don't belong here, and I won't hesitate to have you banned from this property permanently if you continue to cause problems for our legitimate guests." The words were so brazenly inappropriate, so completely divorced from any legitimate hospitality protocol, that they seemed to echo through the lobby like gunshots. Marcus had just threatened permanent banishment from the hotel, essentially declaring that Samantha was an undesirable person who posed a threat to other guests simply by existing in their exclusive space while dressed casually. Jessica Chin felt her professional blood freeze as she realized that Marcus was committing what amounted to career suicide in front of multiple witnesses. Her 15 years of experience had taught her that threatening guests with security removal without just cause wasn't just a violation of customer service standards. It was grounds for immediate termination and potential legal action against the hotel. From her position at the front desk, Jessica could see that other staff members were beginning to recognize the magnitude of Marcus's mistake. Some were backing away from the situation, distancing themselves from what they increasingly understood was a catastrophic violation of professional standards. Others were pulling out their phones, whether to document the incident or alert management to the crisis unfolding in their lobby. But the most chilling aspect of Marcus's behavior was the obvious satisfaction he derived from wielding his perceived power over someone he believed couldn't fight back. This wasn't just discrimination. It was sadistic pleasure taken from humiliating someone based on assumptions about their vulnerability and lack of recourse. What Marcus couldn't possibly have imagined was that the woman he was threatening to have permanently banned from the hotel was the person who had personally written every policy he was claiming to enforce, who had hired him and every security guard he was about to call, and who possessed the authority to shut down his entire workplace with a single phone call. Robert Sterling, still watching from his leather chair, nodded approvingly at Marcus's escalation, apparently believing that threats of physical removal were an appropriate response to someone requesting hotel services, while dressed below his standards. His continued validation was providing Marcus with the social permission he needed to continue his systematic destruction of everything the hotel was supposed to represent. Samantha stood perfectly still, her composure unshakable despite the fire building in her chest. She had experienced discrimination throughout her career, but being threatened with security removal from her own hotel by her own employee was something entirely different. The irony was so complete it seemed designed by cosmic justice. A concierge was about to call security to remove the owner of the building from her own property. The countdown to institutional justice had reached its final moments, and Marcus Thompson was about to discover that some threats should never be made, especially when directed at people who possess unlimited authority to respond with devastating precision. But at the exact moment Marcus reached for his radio to summon security officers who would unknowingly be ordered to remove their own boss from her own property, the hospitality industry witnessed the most devastating display of corporate justice ever captured in a luxury hotel lobby. The timing was so perfect, it seemed, orchestrated by destiny itself. As Samantha Williams calmly reached into her purse and pulled out the device that would transform Marcus from an arrogant gatekeeper into an unemployed cautionary tale in less time than it takes to process a hotel check-in, the movement was so casual, so unremarkable, that for a moment nobody in the marble lobby understood they were witnessing the activation of a corporate response system designed specifically to deal with discrimination at the highest levels of institutional authority. Samantha's fingers moved across her phone screen with the practiced precision of someone who had deployed this protocol multiple times across her hospitality empire, and when she raised the device to her ear, her voice carried an authority that seemed to change the very atmosphere of the elegant space. "Patricia," Samantha said, and there was something in the way she spoke, that single name, that made Jessica's professional instincts scream with recognition that this was not an ordinary phone call. It's Samantha. Initiate Protocol Red at the Chicago flagship. Full management override, effective immediately. The words Protocol Red and Full Management Override struck the lobby like lightning bolts, but their significance was lost on everyone except Jessica, whose comprehensive training in corporate emergency procedures had familiarized her with the most serious response protocols in the Prestige Hospitality Group manual. Protocol Red was the designation reserved for systematic discrimination that threatened the fundamental values of the company, and it could only be activated by the highest levels of executive authority. Marcus continued reaching for his radio, completely oblivious to the corporate death sentence that had just been pronounced over his career. His focus remained fixed on summoning security to remove what he still believed was a problematic guest, unaware that he was about to order hotel security to arrest their own CEO for the crime of requesting service while dressed casually. But Samantha wasn't finished delivering the revelation that would redefine everyone's understanding of power, authority, and consequences in the hospitality industry. As Marcus's fingers closed around his security radio, she spoke the words that would transform him from confident employee to devastated former worker in the span of a single sentence. "You just threatened to have security remove the owner of this hotel from her own property," Samantha said, her voice carrying the cold precision of someone who had built a $2 billion empire and now possessed the authority to dismantle careers with surgical efficiency. The silence that followed was so complete it seemed to vacuum all sound from the luxury lobby. Marcus's hand froze on his radio as his brain struggled to process what he had just heard. The confident, dismissive expression that had dominated his features for the past 10 minutes was replaced by something approaching pure terror as the implications of Samantha's words began to penetrate his consciousness. Robert Sterling, who had been watching the confrontation with smug approval from his leather chair, felt his comfortable world tilt on its axis as he realized that his enthusiastic validation of discriminatory behavior had just been delivered in front of the person who possessed ultimate authority over the hotel where he had enjoyed VIP treatment for over a decade. But it was Jessica Chen who experienced the most complex mixture of emotions as the truth was revealed. Her professional instincts had been correct. Her sense that Marcus was making a catastrophic mistake had been absolutely accurate. The woman she had tried to protect with diplomatic intervention was indeed someone with authority that extended far beyond what her casual appearance suggested. But the scope of that authority was beyond anything Jessica could have imagined. "I am Samantha Williams," she continued, her voice now carrying the full weight of executive authority that commanded respect across the entire hospitality industry. "I am the founder and CEO of Prestige Hospitality Group. I own this hotel. I own the company that employed you. And you just spent the last 15 minutes providing me with perfect documentation of systematic discrimination that violates every principle this organization was built to represent." The revelation was so stunning, so completely outside the realm of what anyone in that lobby had believed possible, that for several seconds nobody could speak or move. Marcus Thompson, who had entered this confrontation as a confident employee exercising what he believed was appropriate authority, was now standing before the person who had personally hired him, who had written every policy he had violated, and who possessed the power to not only fire him, but to ensure he never worked in luxury hospitality again. The transformation was instantaneous and devastating. Marcus had gone from gatekeeper to gatekept, from authority figure to subordinate facing consequences, from confident employee to terrified former worker, all in the time it took for Samantha to make a single phone call and speak 2 sentences that redefined everyone's understanding of who really controlled their professional futures. The countdown to career destruction had reached 0, and the most powerful response to hospitality discrimination in industry history was about to be deployed with the precision of a surgical strike that would reshape not just individual careers, but the entire culture of luxury customer service. What followed was the most swift and comprehensive delivery of hospitality industry justice ever witnessed, proving that when discrimination is exposed at the highest levels of corporate authority, consequences can be immediate, systematic, and absolutely inescapable for everyone who chose to participate in or enable prejudiced behavior. The revelation of Samantha's identity had transformed the elegant hotel lobby from a symbol of luxury service into ground zero for the most spectacular corporate restructuring in modern hospitality history. Within exactly 9 minutes of Samantha's phone call, the marble lobby began filling with people who represented the highest levels of corporate authority in the Prestige Hospitality Group network. Regional directors, compliance officers, and senior executives who normally operated from boardrooms hundreds of miles away were now converging on the Chicago flagship because Samantha had transformed a routine discrimination incident into a corporate emergency that would reshape how the entire luxury hospitality industry approached customer service and professional accountability. Marcus Thompson stood frozen behind his mahogany concierge desk, the security radio still clutched in his trembling hand, as the full magnitude of his professional suicide became clear. Every word he had spoken, every threat he had made, every policy he had violated had been delivered directly to the person who possessed ultimate authority over his career, his reputation, and his future in the hospitality industry. The first executive to arrive was Patricia Hernandez, Samantha's chief operations officer, whose presence immediately signaled that this wasn't just a customer service issue but a corporate crisis requiring systematic intervention. Patricia's arrival was followed by a parade of senior managers whose combined authority could reshape the entire hotel's operational structure in a matter of minutes. Marcus Thompson, Patricia announced, her voice carrying the finality of a corporate execution, your employment with Prestige Hospitality Group is terminated immediately, effective this moment. Please surrender your security badge, radio, and all company property. You will be escorted from the premises and banned from all Prestige properties indefinitely. The words hit Marcus like physical blows, each syllable representing another piece of his professional life being systematically dismantled. He had gone from confident gatekeeper to unemployed pariah in less time than it typically took to check a guest into their room. His hand shook as he slowly removed his security badge, the small piece of plastic that had represented his authority and identity within the hotel now becoming evidence of his former employment. But Samantha's response to systematic discrimination wasn't limited to individual consequences. Her vision of justice was far more comprehensive and strategically devastating than simple termination. As Marcus fumbled with his badge, she addressed the assembled crowd with the authority of someone who was about to demonstrate exactly what happened when prejudice met unlimited corporate power. Robert Sterling, Samantha said, turning her attention to the distinguished guest who had enthusiastically validated Marcus's discriminatory behavior from his leather chair. Your membership in our Prestige Elite program is permanently revoked. You are no longer welcome at any property in our network. Your validation of discrimination against other guests violates every principle of respect and dignity that this company represents. The announcement sent shockwaves through the lobby as other guests realized that even wealthy, long-term customers weren't immune from consequences when they chose to support prejudiced behavior. Robert's face went ashen as he understood that his decades of VIP treatment had just been erased because he had chosen to validate discrimination rather than maintain the neutral dignity expected of guests in a luxury establishment. But perhaps the most powerful moment came when Samantha turned her attention to the people who had demonstrated integrity and professional courage during the crisis. Jessica Chen, who had risked workplace conflict to intervene diplomatically on behalf of appropriate customer service, found herself facing a transformation that would redefine her entire career trajectory. Jessica Chen, Samantha announced, her voice warming with genuine appreciation for someone who had chosen to do what was right despite potential professional consequences. Your intervention today demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership and integrity that Prestige Hospitality Group needs at the management level. I'm promoting you to General Manager of this flagship location, effective immediately. The promotion was more than just recognition for good behavior. It was a strategic placement of someone with demonstrated moral courage into a position where she could prevent future discrimination and ensure that the hotel's culture reflected the values Samantha had spent years trying to instill throughout her organization. David Rodriguez, the young bellhop who had tried to help during the crisis, was also elevated, receiving a promotion to assistant front desk manager with responsibility for training new staff in appropriate customer service protocols. His willingness to recognize when something was wrong, even though he lacked the authority to intervene directly, marked him as someone worthy of increased responsibility and trust. The systematic nature of the consequences was breathtaking in its comprehensiveness. Staff members who had remained silent or offered subtle support for Marcus's behavior found themselves facing mandatory retraining and formal disciplinary action. Those who had distanced themselves from the discrimination or shown concern for appropriate treatment were protected and in some cases rewarded for their professional judgment. Let this be absolutely clear to everyone in the hospitality industry, Samantha declared, her voice carrying the authority of someone whose decisions would influence thousands of employees across dozens of properties. Discrimination based on appearance, race, or perceived economic status will result in immediate termination and permanent industry blacklisting. But more than that, enabling such behavior through silence or validation will also carry severe consequences. The message was unmistakable and would spread through the luxury hospitality network within hours. Samantha had just demonstrated that consequences for discrimination weren't limited to direct perpetrators, but extended to anyone who chose to support or enable prejudiced behavior through action or inaction. Marcus Thompson was escorted from the building by the same security officers he had been about to call to remove Samantha, the irony so complete it seemed designed by cosmic justice. His career in luxury hospitality was over, not just at this hotel but throughout the industry, where Samantha's influence could ensure that his discriminatory behavior would follow him wherever he attempted to find employment. The 9-minute transformation from discrimination incident to complete staff restructuring had just redefined what accountability looked like in the hospitality industry, proving that some forms of justice require not just individual consequences, but systematic reconstruction of entire workplace cultures. But what happened next proved that true justice isn't just about punishment. It's about transformation that creates lasting change to protect countless future guests from ever experiencing the discrimination that had flourished unchallenged in this prestigious establishment. As the marble lobby settled into its new reality with Jessica Chen now standing where Marcus Thompson had wielded his discriminatory authority just minutes before, Samantha Williams prepared to demonstrate that real leadership means using moments of crisis to rebuild entire systems rather than simply removing the people who had failed them. The speed and comprehensiveness of the staff restructuring had sent shockwaves through the luxury hospitality industry, but Samantha's vision extended far beyond personnel changes and individual consequences. She understood that systematic discrimination required systematic solutions, and the Chicago flagship was about to become the testing ground for the most comprehensive anti-discrimination program ever implemented in the hospitality sector. Ladies and gentlemen, Samantha addressed the assembled staff, guests, and executives who had witnessed the most dramatic corporate transformation in modern hotel history. What you have seen today represents more than just consequences for inappropriate behavior. This is the beginning of a fundamental shift in how the hospitality industry approaches dignity, respect, and inclusive excellence. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had built a $2 billion empire and now possessed the influence to reshape entire industries, But it also held the passion of someone who had experienced discrimination personally and was determined to ensure that future generations would never face similar treatment. The announcement that followed would make headlines in hospitality trade publications and potentially revolutionize how luxury hotels across America approached customer service training and accountability. Effective immediately, this flagship location will become the Prestige Hospitality Group Center for Inclusive Excellence, a comprehensive training facility that will set new standards for bias-free customer service throughout the luxury hospitality industry. The scope of Samantha's vision was staggering in its ambition and revolutionary in its approach to addressing institutional discrimination. The hotel that had just been the site of systematic prejudice would be transformed into a beacon of inclusive hospitality, where every interaction would be monitored, every policy would be designed to eliminate bias, and every employee would be trained to understand that true luxury meant creating environments where dignity was universal rather than selective. Marcus Thompson's behavior today, captured by our security systems and witnessed by multiple staff members, will become the centerpiece of our training program. Samantha continued, her words outlining a justice that was both poetic and practical. His discrimination will be preserved as a permanent case study in what never to do in professional hospitality, ensuring that his prejudice serves as education that protects thousands of future guests. The transformation of Marcus's discriminatory behavior into educational material was perhaps the most elegant form of justice imaginable. His actions, which had been designed to humiliate and exclude, would now serve to train hospitality professionals in the importance of treating every guest with equal respect and dignity, regardless of their appearance or perceived economic status. But Samantha's commitment to systematic change extended beyond her own hotel network. In a move that would influence the entire luxury hospitality industry, she announced partnerships with major hotel chains, hospitality schools, and civil rights organizations to develop comprehensive anti-discrimination training programs that would be made available to establishments across the country. We're creating the Dignity First certification program, Samantha declared, her vision encompassing nothing less than a fundamental transformation of hospitality culture across America. Hotels that complete our comprehensive bias elimination training will receive certification that demonstrates their commitment to inclusive excellence, while those that refuse will find themselves excluded from the partnerships and referrals that drive success in the luxury market. The program represented a revolutionary approach to combating discrimination through market forces and industry standards, rather than simply relying on individual consequences or legal requirements. Hotels would have powerful financial incentives to eliminate bias from their operations, while guests would have clear indicators of which establishments truly prioritize dignity and respect. Jessica Chen, standing in her new role as general manager, represented the human face of this transformation. Her elevation from diplomatic intervener to hotel leader demonstrated that integrity and professional courage would be rewarded with real authority and responsibility for implementing positive change. Under Jessica's leadership, Samantha announced, "This flagship location will welcome hospitality professionals from around the world who want to learn how to create truly inclusive luxury experiences." We're not just changing one hotel. We're changing an entire industry's approach to what hospitality really means. The vision extended beyond training to encompass ongoing monitoring and accountability systems that would ensure discrimination could never again flourish undetected. Advanced analytics would track guest satisfaction patterns for signs of bias. Employee behavior would be continuously evaluated for adherence to inclusive standards, and regular assessments would verify that dignity remained universal rather than selective. As Samantha concluded her announcement, the transformation was complete. What had begun as a routine quality assessment had evolved into a corporate revolution that would protect millions of future guests from experiencing discrimination in luxury hospitality settings. The Chicago flagship, which hours earlier had been a symbol of exclusive prejudice, was now positioned to become the gold standard for inclusive excellence. Marcus Thompson had wanted to determine who belonged in the hotel's exclusive spaces, and Samantha had provided the definitive answer. Everyone who understood that true luxury meant creating environments where dignity, respect, and exceptional service were available to all guests, regardless of their appearance, background, or any other factor beyond their humanity. The 9 minutes that had transformed careers and consequences had also planted the seeds of an industry revolution that would ensure Marcus's discrimination became the catalyst for systematic change that would protect countless others from ever experiencing similar treatment. Samantha Williams had turned a moment of personal humiliation into a legacy of protection that would benefit the hospitality industry for generations to come. Samantha Williams' story reveals the most dangerous truth about discrimination. It's not the obvious hatred everyone sees. It's the systematic gatekeeping in professional environments where authority gets weaponized against people based on appearance. What makes this powerful isn't just Marcus getting destroyed, but how Samantha transformed 9 minutes of humiliation into industry-wide protection for millions. From an insider's perspective, this exposes what hospitality executives never admit. Discrimination in luxury services isn't about individual racists. It's about cultures that reward exclusivity over humanity. Marcus felt comfortable threatening removal because he believed his authority was absolute. Samantha proved real power isn't excluding people. It's creating systems where exclusion becomes professionally suicidal. The lesson transcends hospitality. When facing systematic discrimination, you can accept it, fight it individually, or build something that prevents others from experiencing it. Samantha chose transformation over revenge, systematic change over personal satisfaction. She turned 9 minutes of hatred into lifetime protection for countless others. Marcus learned that authority without character is expensive cruelty. Jessica discovered that integrity gets rewarded by leaders who value character. The ultimate message: in a world where victims might own you tomorrow, discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's strategically catastrophic. If this story of systematic justice opened your eyes to what real change looks like when discrimination meets unlimited accountability, smash that like button. Comment below how you've used your power to fight discrimination, and subscribe because we're bringing you more incredible stories of people who turned their worst moments into movements that changed entire industries. You won't want to miss what happens next.